Hello everybody, this is Project Alpha. My name is Nikolai Feldman. You're watching us live with Alexey Arestovich. Hello, hi there. Alright, I suggest we start with the map today, with the map of the front. We have ignored it a couple times and there are different changes there that deserve discussion. Alright, pick where you want to start, from the north or from the south. Let's go from Kherson, from the south. Alright, look, here on the left bank, we continue to hold the perch, and I think the bravery of defenders here and their heroism has elapsed the events of Donetsk airport, if that's even possible, because very small Ukrainian forces are holding a serious group of Russians. Over 2 paratroopers divisions are stuck trying to storm this position. And I can understand why, because this is the shortest distance to Crimea, to the mouth of Crimea Peninsula. So they are concerned if we indeed pick that bank, if we establish our presence permanently, then everything that'll break their whole campaign will start here in Krenki. And this is a very successful, yet very difficult operation, because you can see a lot of videos online as well, but not a single transport, not a single fighter can get to our positions there without being shot at multiple times. So this is a very difficult operation that holds a lot of forces of Russia that otherwise would be storming Rabotino or Chasov Yar. So those Ukrainian heroes who are holding them in this area, sometimes I smile at names and all, but in this case, no smiles. This is indeed a heroic task. There'll definitely be dedicated a chapter to them in this war. So let's go further to Rabotino. Zaporozhye front is stalled in the terminology that we can use from the Second World War. There are local fights ensuing, but the front overall has stalled. And the enemy is using some forces to continue push us out of Rabotino. Some videos, you can see that Rabotino is basically gone, destroyed. The fighting continues and it's bloody, it's hard. The only difference between Rabotino and Chasov Yar, for example, is that our enemy has not concentrated a much larger group of troops in this direction. They have some advantage, they're attacking, but this is not their main focal point, as the whole Zaporozhye front. Now let's go to Novomikhailovskoe. Russians have claimed today that they've taken Novomikhailovskoe. That needs to be checked, but that's Staromayorsk. Novomikhailovskoe is here near Vuhledar. So this is an overall run towards Kurakhova. This is their logic. Why is it important? By a sum of different things. If they succeed, they will push our troops away from Volnovakha, which actually reaches the railroad that they use to supply their troops in the south. Now, Kurakhova, you can see it here on the top of the map. If they get there, they can push us further out, and they also will solve another task of getting behind the back of our troops, both on Zaporozhye front and to support from the south the effort they're exerting near Avdiivka. If you can zoom out a bit so we can see the whole Donetsk region. So see Avdiivka and Pokrovsk with the arrows. That's where they create pressure. That's where they exert most pressure, right, going to Pokrovsk, soldiers of the group center, the ones that have taken Avdiivka. And they're going to that Pokrovsk. But they don't need Pokrovsk so much as they need to start cutting from the south and getting behind our troops and create an attack threat to Konstantinovka. Their next ideation there is to get Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. This is their final goal. And Acheretina, that's another one. You can see that protrusion here. They've claimed to have taken it. Those troops that are on the front, they're saying that this village has been taken, different hands being exchanged daily, so probably it is being controlled now. Now here they go to Konstantinovka, see that crossroad. Chasov Yar is another task that they need to solve in order to get to Konstantinovka. If they break through Chasov Yar, they can reach Konstantinovka via that yellow road. And they reach behind the back of our troops holding Kurdyumovka, see that green area. So Russian commanders are playing their same game, E2, E4. They aggregate their groups on the flanks and they try to encircle our troops and to force them to leave. Nothing changed. They've done it since the beginning of this campaign and they continue doing it. Plus, one can understand if it works, why change the tactics, right? So here's Belogorsky area. They want to cut it off. They absolutely have to cut it off if they want to continue advancing to the end of this region and to Konstantinovka and to Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. Also, that protrusion separates their northern group from their central group. So they need to get rid of it. Where did the map go? This task is difficult for them because there is Seversky Donets River. Remember, about a year ago, they tried to cross it to establish their presence on the other bank, and they were sunk. I think they lost a battalion doing it. So that's the same task they'll be trying to solve soon. Liman, more attempts to solve it, and Svatov and Kupyanskoe, they continue fighting. I don't know where did the map go, Nikolai. If you can bring it back, please. And on Kupyanskoe, they have regrouped, and they have reignited their effort to continue the pressure. So their idea is rather clear. Now we have some of our voices, especially I think Budanov probably mentioned that on the 9th of May they're planning to take Chasov Yar, and in the middle of May they're claiming that it'll be difficult for Ukraine on the front. I think Budanov has outlined that, and I already had about 1 million people ask me this question. What does it mean? It means that it will not be hard on the whole front. Just think of it. 2 months ago, they were advancing in 7 different directions. Today, they can only sustain 3. So every offensive is the matter of aggregating reserves. They don't have reserves. They can only have a little bit more of tactical, and at the most, they can just move their troops around to provide for additional concentration. So it's Chasov Yar, Kupyansk, and Pokrov-Toretsk. These are 3 areas where they will be aggregating their troops. And I think in the near future they will also shrink these 3 down to 1, because even for 3 they don't have enough forces to continue in the manner they were. But what can happen? There's been another publication today that they will attack Kharkov again, and they have indeed attacked Kharkov again. They attacked a couple of the symbolic buildings there and added a bit of a propaganda effort. We understand what is going on there. They're creating an impression that Kharkov is under threat. I think that they'll estimate the situation and see if the results are good, if we're panicking or if our command is reacting. They can actually draw a threat near Kharkov. Ideally, they'll probably bring 15 to 20,000 to that area. They kind of have them there. They're already defending their side of the front. So they'll try to break the front, first of all, in that area near Kharkov, to create some panic, and then to reestablish those of their bloggers who support this idea, who provide additional support to Putin's PSYOP. And this will withdraw some of our troops that otherwise would be defending Chasov Yar. But this is just a special campaign to distract our forces. The main direction of attack would be Chasov Yar, Toretsk, and Konstantinovka. And they'll be pushing towards Kupyansk. This is the idea for the year, not even for the summer, but for the whole year. So don't think it's going to happen tomorrow. They, of course, can take Chasov Yar, Toretsk, and maybe even Konstantinovka as the result of this year. But even getting to Slavyansk and Kramatorsk for them is unreal, at least on this stage. Then the next question is, when will they be able to aggregate big reserves? They're definitely preparing. Their current date is the end of summer, beginning of autumn. That's when we will or should expect a next run towards Slaviansk and Kramatorsk, but I suspect they will fail again. I was thinking that they will fail even before American aid arrived. Now that we have got American aid approved, I think they will not break through. And there'll be more aid coming from Europe as well, and if we manage to conduct our mobilization successfully, they have no chances. All right, let's clarify about Kharkov a bit. We had a publication in Politico, the interview by Andrei Yermak, who said that Kharkov might be the main goal. Oh, no, they denounced that later, and Office denounced that statement. They said that there was a psyop injecting this phrase into the interview. That did not happen. He did not say that. I had my concern about this phrase when I heard in publication that it was used, and I thought that it is not like him to use that. All right, it was good to clarify it, because there are a lot of psyop about Kharkov this week. So, tell us about the main directions of their effort. Do I understand correct that for their counteroffensive that they announced for the end of June, beginning of May, they do not have reserves? They will be using whoever they have currently on the battlefront. Is that so? Yeah, they have some small tactical reserves. Not everybody is on the front, right? They do have some people on the second and third line. So they'll bring them closer to the front. They will do the same thing as they did near Avdiivka when they brought, rather in a hidden fashion, quite a few troops and reached a certain surprise. We discovered that, but we discovered that a few days too late. So they'll try to do the same thing. They'll try to move internally, right? The 7 directions turned into 3, 3 will turn into 1 or maybe 2. They just don't have more resources to attack more. They have issues. And we need to say that they're trying to use at maximum the situation when we don't have enough artillery shells, because we have been announced that we were told that we'll get them, but we do not have them. And also they have some advantage in troops at the moment versus us. So that maximum pressure, I think Chasov Yar, I think that's the one. And you expect this will continue from today till the mid-May or end of May? They will just throw a notable group in a certain direction by taking these troops from Rabotino, Novomikhailovskoe, Vugledar, other places. Maybe they'll take some from Svatova, and they'll just drop them towards Kupyanskoe and Chasov Yar. They are very tempted to continue pushing towards Pokrovsk and towards Toretsk, and they probably will. So we'll see how they will try to solve it. It's not an easy task for them to do, and this is our analysis of it. About the interview given by Budanov, who said, there is a hard time in our future, but Ukraine will not lose. So do you think the head of military intel needs to discuss this framework? Because last year he said we'll get to Crimea and Yalta, and this year he's saying that it'll be a difficult time, but we will not lose. What is that for? Nikolai, let's leave the head of military intel to define his own media politics. Many people are asking questions, though. Many people are of the opinion that he shouldn't even be commenting on things or giving interviews abroad. The others are saying that this is a new motion, new experiment, so let's trace it, see what happens. I think we can only judge him at the end of this war. For now, we can observe that this is the tactic, the politics that he had chosen. Yes, they were, of course, mistakes. And during, the war of that scale, that difficult it is, the only one who will not be making mistakes is the one who does nothing. Also, given that Budanov has a lot of analytics, a lot of data coming through him, even he can be mistaken sometimes, because the war is very unpredictable. Why? Because there are a lot of decisions being made in an unpredictable fashion. Many professionals mix the ability to judge the capability with an ability to judge their intention. And judging the intention is not an analytical category. It's a mix of white magic and voodoo, astrology and tarot cards, because you don't know what the enemy will decide. Who knew that Macron will come out, for example, if we talk about allies? And promise that they will provide support. France that left Africa, that got the French franc currency area destroyed, essentially for them. Out of 5 countries of their league, 4 of them had military coups and only 1 is left. This is catastrophe, right? And then he comes out and makes such a statement against Putin and expresses his solidarity with Ukraine. And then Europe also comes out. So this is more difficult to judge this intention. Do you know when they started to separate capability from intention? After 1973, when Israelis gauged the capabilities properly of their foes, but they misjudged the intention. And if you notice that the situation kind of changed, repeated again. Back, it was, I think, 6th of October. This last year, it was 7th of October, when Israelis did not expect this attack. When they just allowed more workers, gave additional benefits for Palestinians, they were thinking it's coming down. But Hamas has never changed, right? There's a whole dynasty of their spies and terrorists in there. And yeah, here's another example we can bring. That tragic story with a dead young cop. The judgment of capabilities was there. Who could have expected that the military officer will shoot a policeman, right? So they misjudged the intentions. It's difficult. Intentions is a non-classifiable category. Why we had a lot of victims in Bucha and some other places where the sadists from Putin's army were acting. I think I wrote a post that the problem with a maniac is that they don't look like maniacs. And it's not serial killers who are doing these atrocities at war. Serial killers will probably do the same, but it's just common citizen, or he looks pretty normal on the outside. And you don't know, because that occupant can live for 15 days in your house, drink your tea, carry your kids, and then, just like in the times of Second World War, if the crying child upset him, he can just throw him in a well or hang him, or take a knife and cut somebody, or just rape the girl. And that happens in a split second. Just some 18-year-old turns to be a maniac like that in times of war. This is very difficult. The shock of a usual person is that you cannot believe that a person just like you can do these atrocities. And one thing is to calculate tanks, another is to calculate what's inside the head of the one who is ordering these tanks to move. Yeah, the judgment of intentions, that's more difficult, I see. We probably should have estimated since 2014 that Russia can, that they have capability, and we denied that. And they've paraded a few things, right? They paraded the prisoners of war in Donetsk, and it's Russian world. They cannot do anything without sadism and torture. All right, it's probably a good point here to mention that we do support armed forces of Ukraine, and under this stream we continue our fundraising efforts for our servicemen, for their direct accounts, to purchase several items that they requested. Now for 25th Brigade, we are helping them to raise 500,000 hryvnias for UAVs. I think it's the second stream already that we're helping them. Yeah, 25th is gathering money for, actually it's not UAVs, it's drones, but they're land-based drones. These are evacuation drones to help remove the wounded from the front line. The troops are looking for new opportunities because it's very difficult otherwise. The normal transport cannot reach them very often. And the situation is so difficult that just to deliver 2 bottles of water and zinc of ammo, people need to walk for a day, a small distance of a couple of kilometers, try to hide it during the night, and yeah, it's a very difficult task. So we've fundraised the same thing for 117th, now 25th wants to repeat that experience, so let's pitch in, and this is a non-military type of aid. This is evacuational aid. And evacuation teams, they risk a lot. They actually are being hunted by the Russian side. So it has become very difficult to remove the wounded from the front. There are some places where they can't. And that means that if you're wounded, you'll likely bleed and die. So these land-based drones is an opportunity to try to help them. I know many people don't want to pay their money for maybe religious or some other reasons to donate to the war effort. So this one is not the war effort, this is helping people, saving them. And also another fundraiser, a children's center in Tallinn. There are a lot of kids there. Many of them are evacuated from Mariupol. All of the kids have PTSD. They have psychologists working with them. They study English, Estonian. I've visited that center personally, and I'm trying to help them as I can. So another important fundraiser for that. A lot of kids, and they definitely help our Ukrainian mothers a lot. And they're helping our migrants as well, because our mothers cannot, who are evacuated there with kids, they cannot work, they cannot pay their rent otherwise. So this is a center that helps them. It's essentially their daycare, and it's a specialized one because children with PTSD, they need special help. And that's why we're doing the fundraiser for them. They can live, the whole center survives only by charity effort, and they have no other sources of funding. We also have Ukrainian refugees working in that center, our psychologists, our teachers, our girls with Ukrainian education. So this is our cultural and aid center in Estonia that we're trying to help. Right, we'll add the link to that at the bottom. Right, I know that there are some people who don't want to donate money to anything military, but this one is specifically for children. So if you want to go this venue, if you can donate to kids, please chime in here and provide some additional help. Thank you. Okay, I suggest we go to the question of aid that was approved by United States, that was voted for already. The structure of this aid is rather interesting, and hence there are a lot of commentary online. People are waiting from you to hear a few clarifications. Out of 61 billion that were voted in the US, we only, I think, should expect 7.9 billion of direct financial aid, and that will be credit-based. Everything else will be not credit-based. Do I read it correctly? You should remember the post by Victoria Sparts. She said that Ukrainians will get, I don't remember, 16.8 billion. That's why I voted no. So why that post is important? Everybody already condemned her that she's a traitor, she's not a Ukrainian, even though she is wearing Ukrainian dress and speaks Ukrainian, but she's a traitor. It's good that Ukrainians start to understand that there are traitors wearing Ukrainian dress. Moreover, I'll say that the real traitors exactly look like that. They all wear our Ukrainian dress and they speak proper Ukrainian. That's how they're being selected for. Because the spy who is screaming, "I'm Russian," is a very strange spy, right? But in this case, I think Victoria Sparts is not a spy, but she is objecting to that structure that we discussed. The Democrats, again, formed the situation in such a way that they caused a lot of Republicans to be against it. Because what Biden administration is saying so proudly, that 75% of this aid to Ukraine remains in the United States. President Zelensky used the same appeal that the money will stay in the U.S. economy, which is great for U.S. economy, but it would be nice actually to get 75% for the armed forces of Ukraine rather. So I think this bill can be fine-tuned in perpetuity, but regardless of however it is being adopted, it's still a benefit for us, even in this structure, in this way. So thank you for voting for that, U.S. House of Representatives. But even though we may disagree with some things, you know, it's a gifted horse, so you don't look that horse in the teeth. How long do you think it'll carry us through? I think it's going to be enough till the end of this year. We need to understand main things, that we continue to receive U.S. aid, and part of it is being still manufactured under contracts and monies that were dedicated previously. And till September, we already have things allocated that will be moved to us, produced and delivered. And then more aid will come from this bill, and additional aid will come from EU. I know it for sure. So we will be able to stand this year. a more important thing is that somebody needs to bring us as a society to reality. I think on this stream, we're the ones that usually purvey the possibilities of real. So on a large scale, Russians will go into two counteroffensive. One is now, May, June. The second one is end of August, September, October. Both will fail. We will repel them with the help of Western aid, and the front will freeze by October, November. And then both sides will ask the question. Everybody in the world will ask the question. So Ukrainians with Western aid went into counteroffensive. The front moved for 13 centimeters. Not in certain parts. Some parts we were rather successful, but as a front overall, as a general. Now Russians will go, and the front will move for another 5 plus minus. They will probably exert 100,000 lives on this. We may lose 25,000 repelling it. There'll be another question. What next? To change situation on the front drastically, two things need to happen. Either Chinese army needs to give a third or a quarter of their people and equipment to Russian army, or US military gives Ukrainian army a quarter of their reserves. None of that is a possibility. So what next? We have two options. We either stand as long as we can, hoping that somebody on the West will awaken and US Army and the EU will give us a third of their capability, or perhaps manufacture a lot for us by 2026. Or we're waiting until China gives something to Russia, and then situation will also change. Perhaps both will happen. So if both sides will provide aid, there'll be another crushing wave after wave without much results on both sides. Or we start negotiating. And I think in autumn, why am I talking about that? That in autumn we will be pushed towards negotiations by everybody. And that plan that was recently presented as if it's Erdogan's, it's a Russian plan. And I think it's a Russian plan with some American discussions in it, American trace in it, and Erdogan was asked to bring it to light. Simple sign. Why do I think so? There is one simple sign. Erdogan would have never written in referendum in 2040 into that proposal of freezing till 2040. Why? Well, that's pure Russian demand. Why do you think so? What significance does 2040 have for Turkey? They don't care. It's not for them. They'll probably have gone through 2 or 3 presidents in Turkey by that time. But in Russia, one president is hoping to last to about 2040, plus minus. Till 36, I think, right? Right, and 6 more. So with additional cushioning, after that they don't care. So this is a Russian plant, and it was thrown as a test to see who bites and what will be discussed. These speeches will exacerbate in autumn from different sides, and then more Western politicians will start asking questions too. What next? You did not move, they did not move. You know, Alexey, I think it has to be a will of both sides for negotiations to happen. Right, but then eventually there'll be a question, who is the figure who is precluding agreement from being signed? And all the views will be directed at the head, at the leader. All right, in any case, it appears that until the end of this year we have enough aid from US, and then EU aid is coming, and then we'll probably reassess situation then. I cannot find any other option for us, because current conditions don't really help of this agreement. Right, we are in a very narrow corridor, Nikolai. We cannot surrender. I'll probably be the first one to shoot somebody if the leader comes out and says we need to surrender. But we also don't want to fall into Paraguay variant, because it is a destiny of our country, of our home. Paraguay still has hundreds of years later issues with population, and they had to go for some drastic measures to try to replenish the losses they suffered back then. So, difficult place for us to be. Oh, we also should remember one more thing, that by that time, by autumn, they'll probably destroy our energy transmission lines significantly, will probably decimate their gasoline production. So probably Black Fleet will be done with, and they'll hit us in some pain points too. So we'll be in a deeper destruction by that time. Right, I wanted to clarify here, Alexey. Do you want to invoke internal discussion in Ukraine with these? My goal, Nikolai, is to forewarn, because now we have gotten aid and there'll be talks that, yay, now with this aid we'll continue pushing Russians. But people just don't understand the position of the West and the current administration of US. And it is just like in 1971 with Egypt and Israel, to weaken both and then control both better and region at large, and that's it. It's a very sobering thought. If we were at the place of the United States, we probably would be practicing the same realpolitik strategy with two countries fighting. And if we use that as a hypothesis, which unfortunately looks very true, it means that it's very questionable that we'll ever receive a critical mass of support to go into real counteroffensive and to change the front line, but they will not let us lose. So let me ask you another thing, Alexey. If you were in the position of people making decisions in Ukraine, how would you use the volume of aid that is being provided for Ukraine? To answer this, Nikolai, I would need to know the exact size of aid that is coming through. We don't have the specifications in the open. Nobody will give the full nomenclature. But the logic is simple for now, to stop their counteroffensive in the most brutal manner so that they would suffer severe losses, that they would understand they cannot carry on, and then try to bring them to the table from the position of power, or at least to be equals at the same table. Let me clarify here. Should we counteroffend too, or just stop theirs? We don't have enough forces to counterattack in this case. We just need to stop them and waste their reserves as much as we can. And after that, come and ask the question. Are you done? We can talk. So in November, you would make a suggestion to discuss, to sit down and talk. Well, not so much by November, but by the end of their counteroffensive, when they will fall apart. Right? That will be the weakest point in the campaign this year. Why after that? Why not in winter? Because I would not want our country to go into winter season again, because they'll continue attacking our energy infrastructure. It will not be good. And they also are dreading this because we will continue destroying their refineries and other interesting targets on the territory of Russia. So by the end of this year, we'll be reaching way further than we are now. And we have some serious arguments. And the moment when their counteroffensive will fail, that'll be a good moment for us to come to negotiations from the position of force, or at least from the position of equality. I want to say, don't be delusional. Everything will end up as negotiations. Even if we continue fighting this year, in 26 and 27 and 30, there will still be negotiations at the end of it. I'm concerned with the destiny of Ukraine, so I'm observing a good possible point of entry into this process later this year. And this is the position in the West as well. A lot of political forces that are providing us this aid, this is their position too. I understand how terrible it may sound for our Ukrainian ear, because we think that just, and rightly so, that just end of this war would be to get enough aid to destroy Russia militarily on the battlefield. But once again, the West is concerned with Russia being destroyed militarily. They are concerned with our victory and their defeat at about the same level, so they will not let us win dramatically on the battlefront. They will not let us lose, though, but yeah. And we have two positions in Ukraine prevalent now. Even looking at our polls, half of Ukraine wants to finish it with negotiations, probably now. The other half wants to continue fighting till the end. So for me, probability is for us to really prevail on the front. A very desirable option is if we get so much weapons that we can push Russians back outside of our country. Or more realistic, what I think will happen is that they'll give us enough to destroy their counteroffensive effort, and at this point they'll be at the very low point this year. And then we'll have to talk. You know, politicians, regardless of how horrible it is, one of our politicians will have to go to negotiations and to shake hands ultimately with somebody who gave awards to 64th Brigade that did Bucha campaign, to those who destroyed Mariupol as well. So somebody will have to carry it out. What do you think can be taken as a basis? We can take that funny plan that they presented through Erdogan and we can turn it into how it could look like, in our view. No referendums in 2040. Referendum needs to be done as fast as possible if we are doing it, for one simple reason. Not that they will convert our population till 2040 and somebody will grow from 1-year-old to 16 who doesn't even know anything different, being under Russian occupation. But we need to think about people. If we freeze this war in 2024, a referendum in 2040 means that these territories for 16 years will be in the unknown status. All documents, all deals, all contracts, people without status for 16 years of their life. They basically suggesting we will not adopt these territories into Russian Federation proper. So I do want to bring a question. Why do we want to keep our people without their status for 16 years? Supposedly we care about our populace. So no, the moment we do ceasefire, the moment we disengage on the front, the moment the negotiations start happening, we need to conduct a referendum. And it needs to allow all political forces to participate in it. It will be problematic because Russian troops will be there. We have to have our forces and our observers to be present there. We have to have our political parties to be present and international observers in such quantities to defend them from local FSB, Russian Guard and all that. This is a very unheard of operation. I'm just outlining the difficulty of the plan that they suggested. Just look at this critically. I'm not suggesting my plan at this moment, because if you're going to realize it through Erdogan, we'll show you the view from Ukrainian side, where elections have been ever conducted in such a fashion, when there is police, Russian FSB, Russian military occupying the territory. How do you even conduct it? Another weakness I can outline. They're saying, okay, Ukraine is not in NATO, but they can go to EU. How can we join EU with occupied territory? Not a single peace treaty will change internationally acknowledged borders of Ukraine. This is United Nations element. So as long as we have a single occupant in our territory, EU proposition for us is a very questionable affair. We need to get rid of the occupants first. So that's another weak point. And of course, they are suggesting guarantees and other things. I do have answers to that, but I will preserve them till November, about what would be the smart way of doing it. And I think this suggestion is dropped on us to test our reaction to that and to test the Western reaction. My answer to that is no referendum in 2040, even if it will be at some point. I'm not sure when and how, but it should be done immediately rather than further out. Then the second, neutral status that they're trying to tie onto Ukraine, it needs to be exchanged for something significant. And I think that significant should be withdrawal of troops, because referendum with troops under guns, that doesn't pass the smell test. So the plan that they proposed is unrealistic. Now, attention. Sorry, Alexey, so your estimation, even with withdrawal of troops, it doesn't look realistic. Sure, yeah, imagine in some parallel universe we decided to do the referendum. It still presents a lot of dangers and unclearness and concerns. And then a question, if this document is not real, what can change it? Either a goodwill and a real desire to sit down and work on it and make changes, or changes on the battlefront that will enforce other reality. And I think that if negotiations are to occur somewhere, there'll probably be a list of very painful compromises from both sides, from them, but from us as well. The only exception would be if we've gotten a ton of armaments, and we managed to kick their butts out of our country. But it probably is only within 1% or 0.5% probability overall. On the other hand, at the same time, who precludes China in this scenario from supplying more arms to Russia? And now Blinken is traveling to China. They probably will be discussing exactly the same thing about dual-use items, about some military supplies that they're sending. Also, there is a different point of view, claiming that Russia is running out of steam in the military-economic relation, and they have maybe 1 year, maybe at most 2, to stand. After that, they'll just fall. And if you really manage to hang on Ukraine for that time, it will be a very different time at the end of this period to sit down and negotiate. You will be in a much better situation. That has some truth, because Russia is definitely going on the downslope already. And they are saying it will not come immediately, it will come after a year, maybe a year and a half, but it will get there. So this is also another opinion. If we are considering different scenarios, that's another scenario. Just hang on, right? There is only one nuance. We presented critique to Russian plan. Now we can present critique to this position. And the critique is another 2 years of war is a Paraguay option for Ukraine. We definitely will fall below the threshold where we want to be, regardless of how much arms are we being given. Our only way to survive this year or 2 years would be to work so well on diminishing our losses and diminishing our economic losses as well. And for that, we need to restart the economy, which is actually in a difficult position, not so much from Russian influence, but also from our own internal politics, which one can say is rather murderous for our own economy. We need to create conditions so people actually do get a chance to come back, the best of ours, who can run businesses, who can make new businesses. And then we need to change how we draft people into our military forces and how we use them there, so we can exacerbate Russian losses and try to minimize our own. That's also an option, but I have no delusions about our politics changing until President Zelensky stops being President Zelensky. They are guiding a rather fatal politics internally, domestically, for Ukraine economy. And we have two issues for our internal economy, basically. One is, yes, Russian aggression, and the other is our own actions within. We cannot deal away with aggression immediately, but if the powers to be in Ukraine would start working on making sure our businesses can survive that ordeal. So, yeah, otherwise that scenario may work as well, but we need to make sure that we can stand for that long. So, these are options that we'll be going through. In autumn, we'll have a very strong inner political conflict, and also with a lot of exerted pressure from outside on us. Zelensky will be under a ton of pressure to sit down and negotiate. There'll be a lot of people drafted, mobilized. Some of them will be dead by that time, so there will be already some consequences of this mobilization. There'll be more grief coming to families. Those who have lost people, there'll be more electrical lines destroyed, and cold winter looming upon us. Now, in Russia, they will be running into issues with oil refineries, with gasoline, with money, with military equipment. It will not be an easy time. Okay, Alexey, I have another thought about the scenarios that you suggested. Let's go, if we try to go with a framework when there is no negotiations, President Zelensky is holding the pressure, there is some stability in how we do it, and we enter 2025. And we only get American aid till the end of that 2025, as we know now. We don't know what will be after. But we can probably consider that it'll be just as difficult to pass through American Congress more aid to Ukraine. Either just as difficult as it is now, or maybe more difficult. Looking at our current situation and how they passed this bill, what do you think will happen then in 2025? And perhaps after that year, Russia indeed will start rolling down, as some prognosis promises. How do we stand through 2025? This is a very difficult story, Nikolai, because here there is only one hope on Europe, that by that time they will ramp up their military production. They're really trying. we'll see some sensational statements towards midsummer, a little later than that, about the battle readiness of EU and the amount of aid for Ukraine. But will they get to the field before or during 2025? American aid was a difficult proposition already. It took us 5 months to get more aid right this time, and we'll see how it will go then. It's not going to be easy. Another piece of news that I just saw, over 100,000 Ukrainians voluntarily left their troops, their army detachments. This is a huge group. As somebody is writing in the press, mobilized are continue to leave their army units and sharing experience online and everywhere how to do that. And very few of them are being caught and reprimanded for this. This is a catastrophe. 100,000, there'll be another 100,000 from this coming mobilization, the way we were doing it. That weakens the army. There are refusers who don't leave the detachment, but they refuse to carry out certain duties in the army as well. And you can change that only when you implement a radical change of personnel policies in the army and rather drastic changes within the internal politics. And we are not seeing that. And this is exactly what we're missing to use the normal scenario. We need to do that first, and then American aid. But as always, we are thinking that somebody else will make a decision for us. We'll, in the meantime, carry on and maybe steal a little more in the evening, right? However many times you talk, however different scenarios you review, the pinnacle and the focal attention should be us. What are we doing ourselves? I think by the end of this year, our capabilities to hit Russia painfully and deeper will only increase. We, summing it up, will push back on their counteroffensive, and I think we will be able to ramp up some of our production. Europe will ramp up their production too, but America still holds a key because their support will be crucial. I'm afraid European will not get to the full steam by the time we need it. And in America, it's a big question mark now. With presidential elections, we don't know who will win, and we have big questions who will and how will they behave once they win. Nobody will betray Ukraine. Trump will not betray Ukraine, but how they will try to bring us to the table with Russia, that's a big question. And there could be two options, basically. We will not be giving you anything, so sit down and negotiate, or we will be giving you as much as we are, but you need to sit down and negotiate. And it will be very difficult to repeat that trick with $60 billion. So that's why I'm saying this year is going to be a very decisive one. In different publications, Alexey, they're bringing up that there'll be more detailed control over the ways that American supplies are being spent in Ukraine. They actually outline additional 26 millions to continue monitoring what and how it is being spent. Yeah, that we should not be afraid of. We're not stealing that to be seriously concerned about controls and audits. That's fine. But the problem is the volumes. What do you mean? How many shells, how many monies do we have to sustain the army? One dead soldier is 15 million hryvnias. To draft somebody, what is it, 1,300,000, right, just to mobilize somebody? So we need to get money for all of that. And we have an army the size of 1.3 million, so we need money for that. And we'll bring another 300,000. There are more questions than answers. There is an answer, and we have given it. The most optimistic and realistic at the same time scenario, if we choose to pursue that, it includes changes with the cadre, social and economic policies within the country. And sadly, I don't think we have an option. I don't think it's going to happen. We don't have the government that can do it. And after these changes, it would have been much easier for us to get aid from the United States and others, because we would have something to present for it. So when you were saying, Alexey, about changes in cadre and social politics, it doesn't sound too precise as to what needs to be done exactly, especially for those who haven't monitored us and all the details. We're talking about humane attitude to people here, right? Right. We're talking about the main phrase. Government needs to turn its face to people. Business should not be tortured economically, but should be supported. Their interests should be helped by the government, or at least not make it worse. And in the army, you need to provide options for your recruits to choose where to serve and to treat them humanely, and establish a system of responsibility for commanders of different levels for idiotic tasks. Tasks 200, the tasks where people are being sent to die. And provide necessary training to make sure that doesn't happen. Make sure we have enough resources in the government to work with those who are refugees from other parts of the country that are being occupied currently, to start building them some dwellings, some mobile homes, so they can be close to their places where they work. And that'll be easy for us to establish those modular homes that you can move depending upon the economic situation in the country and the demand for labor. And we also need to find ways to deal and to work with people who left the country. And according to different estimates, that's about 12 million people. Every third Ukrainian now is outside of the country. How does Ukraine treat them? What names are they being called? From government, not even from people. You're not citizens, you're traitors, you're criminals, you're the ones who fled, you're the ones who are not performing for its country, and will be limiting consular services and harming you more so that we would love Ukraine more after. This is all our foreign politics right now. This is what our politics looks like when we remove Pushkin's monument and then the next day we come to United Nations and ask them to vote for us. And in Ukraine, we do kind of the same thing on a different frame. You're a deserter, you're a traitor, we'll start a criminal prosecution about you, and that's why you need to come back to Ukraine and go to the army. And this is the demand ballpark. That's how we're communicating with them. And I meet a lot of Ukrainians here, mothers with tears in their eyes who fled Mariupol with 2 little kids, for example. They look at all that and are saying, why our own country hates us so much? For what? How is that warranted? And many of them have their husbands who are still fighting. So it turns out that the husband is a hero and the wife is a traitor? Is that the message? And then they ask why Ukraine is in the top 5 countries for divorces. Russia is higher, right? But it doesn't matter for us really internally. We care about us. So, for example, what did the country do to prevent these divorces from escalating? Those families that are split because of war. Did they think about it even? Right, I don't think they even gave it a thought, Alexey. Right, they only exacerbate the problem because we have a catastrophe of children growing without fathers. Children who have not seen their fathers for 2 years already. Plus, their own country is telling that you are traitors, that you're hiding out overseas or in EU somewhere. Come back to Ukraine and rebuild our economic field. Well, how do you want to come back when our economy is in such a dire strait? We don't have proper taxation system. Our regulations are cumbersome and horrible. Why don't we pay attention to that right now? Why don't we start giving credit to local manufacturers to produce what we need, maybe for the front? And that's a known secret. All the countries who've done it, from Singapore to Israel, they've walked this path. We can repeat exactly the same thing, but we are doing that in reverse. So remember what Mannerheim said before figuring out how to defend the country? Perhaps you first need to create a country that's worth defending. Had anybody tried to talk seriously with those 100,000 people who fled their army units? You're a man, you've been to the army, you expressed bravery, you came there, but then you left. Why? What happened? Because most of these people are the ones, and majority according to polls, they're not the ones who were brought there by force. They're the ones who came there. They got the mobilization writ, they went through the system, they go to the army, they end up in their army unit, maybe even have fought a few battles, and after that he says, you know what, to hell with you, I'll leave that. And we have 100,000, over 100,000 already. According to publication, right, over 100,000. Now, did anybody research why? 100,000 is more than were engaged in our counteroffensive, almost twice more. So, did anybody analyze the reasons seriously? These are not deserters who weren't even, or not the ones who refused to even appear in the military system. These ones decided to show up. These ones came. And then what did the system do to them so that they ran away? Perhaps we can find out the reasons and work with that. Or perhaps make a transfer from one brigade to another should not be lasting for 9 months or 2 years. Perhaps they should have a voice in which brigade they want to join. Right? Yes, Alexey, sorry I interrupted you. No, I'm done. On our Alpha channel and other streams, we have an interview with a fella whose call sign is Historian. He's one of those who was awaiting for the transfer, got a signature of the commander-in-chief on his transfer documents, but got into conflict with his immediate leadership, and he could not wait longer. The conflict escalated so much that he had to leave the unit. Oh yeah, that's our tradition. Very often they start to become, they're treated as deserters essentially by their unit because they want to transfer to another. And very often they're being sent to do the impossible tasks, to basically perish on the front. And at the first year of our military school, they were telling us, if the person is leaving the detachment, give him a golden parachute. If he is leaving by transfer, if he's just leaving it, give him a golden parachute so he can remember how you treated them. And back then, we did not have contractors. We had only those who served the usual 2 years. So our teacher was asking us, what will these soldiers bring back to civilian life after having served under you for these 2 years? They'll have an opinion about army. It will result in your salaries, in your benefits, in your family situation later in life. You need to make sure they have good memories of army, not as a torture unit. And what are we doing? Right, and these people who are leaving the army, they're saying to hell with you. 100,000 men who could be fighting. We could have additional 5 army corps on the front. 30 brigades who voluntarily left, roughly. I think we had about that many brigades before war, right? Yeah, that's a very peculiar problem. And I'm quite sure that we can probably bring half of them back to armed forces. They do want themselves. That historian that we talked with, he talked about motivation. He wants to go back. And we analyzed all these things. And from his words, it becomes clear that most people are ready to engage. Right, and all we need to do is to have a president's order to create a commission where there'll be an ombudsman for the rights of servicemen, for the human rights, a representative from Ministry of Defense, specialized military prosecutor's office, committee from Congress, investigative committee, and by an order of a president, it has to be a very detailed order. Give very limited time to review and to present a plan. Amnesty, ways to return, ways to address grievances, and that's it. You can return probably half to 2/3 of that if you put the right people onto this process. Right, and allowing direct recruitment for brigades is important. That's exactly an important step. Right, that also needs to be supported by law, and we would be saying that yes, you can return, and you can return to the brigade that you choose to return to. That's the way to bring them back. And you know what the numbers will tell us? We want to get 300,000 more, but 100,000 of them are already trained servicemen. You don't need to spend 1.3 million to draft them. You're saving 400 millions that you can use otherwise. Just work with them. So why we do not do it? What is the reason stopping us? Most tasks standing in front of Ukraine, they do not require some Solomon mind. You do not need to be super wise. They're simple. They're straightforward. Why are we not doing it? End of part 1.